السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا رسول الله نبيه ومصطفاه وعلى آله وصحبه وكل من اهتدى بهداه واجمعنا به اللهم وشفعه فينا يا رب العالمين. اللهم بلغنا رمضان، اللهم بلغنا رمضان، اللهم بلغنا رمضان، اللهم اكتبنا من أهل القرآن، اللهم اسلك بنا مسلك الصالحين والعارفين بك والمهتدين بهدي نبيك وبكتابك صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم آمين. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن تحيط بنا الملائكة وتتنزل علينا الرحمة والسكينة، وأن يكتبنا ويذكرنا مع الملأ الأعلى في عليين. اللهم آمين. أهلا وسهلا بحضراتكم. Welcome my dear brothers and sisters to this series of 7 sessions. Tonight inshallah is muqaddimah. It's going to be short, nice and quick inshallah. It's not meant to be the actual beginning. The actual beginning is tomorrow inshallah. And before we start, mashallah, I'm very proud to be with between those two, and I'm like a sandwich right now between the two beautiful young presenters, عن يميني الشيخ أصيرم بارك الله فيه الدكتور أصيرم to be inshallah, and Sheikh as well, and Sheikh Abdullah al-Mubarak بارك الله فيه وفي والديه اللهم آمين. So quick presentation about the presenters. Obviously I'm here to moderate for the most part. Brother Zak, thank you, Brother Zakir. You're testing my patience. Both of that we know, Usayrim, mashallah, Dr. Muhsin's son, very much interested about knowledge, حافظ لكتاب الله تبارك وتعالى, and soon to be mujaz inshallah, and actually asked me today, can we start this matn reciting? He is always eager to learn from whatever source of knowledge, from whatever knowledge that he can get to. نحسبه ولا نزكيه على الله. الشيخ Abdullah al-Mubarak من عائلة علم, from a family of knowledge, both sides. Al-Mubarak, scholars, family of scholars. If we talk about them, that's going to take long time. Or the other side, Al-Kilani, family of scholars as well. فلا عجب, يعني no wonder that this is the offshoot that's coming from شجرة طيبة إن شاء الله أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء, such a wonderful and good tree بفضل الله تبارك وتعالى. Abdullah al-Mubarak, he is now studying, and he decided to further his knowledge in Al-Urdun, mashallah, right now. And actually he said, I'm going to be there for like a week and I would like to do something. And we brought this quickly, Imam Nawawy, book of Al-Tibyan fi Adab Hamalat al-Quran, and we discussed it, and 3 of us, and we thought this is going to be good to do before Ramadan, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Talking about quickly getting to Al-Mu'allif, the author. We'll talk about Al-Mu'allif, the author, Imam Nawawy. We'll talk about the book quickly, in general, as an introduction, and if we still have time, we can get to the first chapter or two. The first few chapters or the first chapter or two are very short and small to get to, inshallah. أولا, who is Imam Nawawi? I would leave this for Usayrim and Abdullah al-Mubarak, starting with Abdullah al-Mubarak and getting it to Usayrim, inshallah. And 3 of us will discuss. From the beauty of the ilm is, subhanallah, we talk about somebody who passed away some 800 years ago, one of the leading scholars, Muslim scholars, and ذكر الصالحين يحيي الإيمان في القلوب. When you remember those who led the way for us, role models for us, this revives faith in our heart. Without any further ado, Sheikh Abdullah al-Mubarak, and we get to Imam al-Nawawi. Who is Imam al-Nawawi?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, such a great honor to be here, alhamdulillah, in front of you, back home, to talk about such a great Imam, with such great audience, alhamdulillah, such great people. فنسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يبارك لنا, يبلغنا رمضان يا رب, ويبارك لنا في رمضان, and to give us the greatest amount of ta'ah, ya Rabb. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah is a universally accepted scholar, subhanallah, one of the scholars that the ummah تلقته بالقبول rahimahullah. And his full name is Imam Abu Zakaria Yahya bin Sharaf Muhyiddin al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Yahya bin Sharaf al-Nawawi, and his name al-Nawawi is after a city in southern Syria called Nawa. an area of southern Syria called Huran.
Which many of us do not know, by the way.
So all those here from southern Syria, mashallah, can be proud of yourselves.
Where is the Huranis here?
The Huranis. The Imam we're talking about was from your neighborhood, mashallah.
Do you know the Nawa, the city or the little town by the name of Nawa?
Nawa.
معروفة؟ ما زالت معروفة؟ ما شاء الله. لكم الشرف العظيم. You have such a great honor to be from the same area that Imam Nawawi was born in. Subhanallah.
MashaAllah. And he's buried there, Imam Nawawi.
So he is Nawawi نسبة إلى المدينة.
المدينة
Like if you say you are Floridian, so he was a Nawawi. That's not his name. That's his nisbah. Nisbah or attribution to the city where he was born in. What is the other nisbah or the name? He is Dimashqi as well, right?
نعم صحيح.
He lived in Dimashq for quite a while.
نعم. They said when he was 19 years old, his father took him to Dimashq, and his father was also a great sheikh named Sheikh Sharaf, and he was a alim and a bara, and he had a suq. So like back then, mashallah, you had businessmen who were also shuyukh. So he had a dukkan or like a suq, a market, and he would hire Imam Nawawi, and he would put his son to work in the suq. And of course, Imam Nawawi, as a lover of knowledge and ilm and Quran, he didn't like working in the market and business. He liked ilm and seeking knowledge. So while he was buying and selling and selling things to people, he'd be reading Quran and reviewing, his wird of Quran, everything. He was always busy with ilm, even like in his work, mashallah, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. And that's why he produced these great works, like the one we're reading, inshallah ta'ala. He went to Damascus when he was 19, and he studied, the first madrasa was called Al-Rawahiyya, and he studied in many madaris over there, and he taught in many madaris. And he was known for his ilm and his wara' and his zuhud, and it was even said that from his wara' he wouldn't eat of any of the fruits and vegetables in Damascus, because a lot of the businessmen were negligent with their fruits and vegetables. Sometimes they would get fruits from awqaf, that were endowments. And so he was afraid that the fruits that were being sold in the markets were from those endowments, and that way it would be haram food that he was eating. So out of his scrupulousness and his piousness, he would avoid even the fruits and vegetables and just eat the food that his parents would bring him from Noah, from his hometown city. Subhanallah.
That's from his zuhd. But the other point is, the scholars mention most of Dimashq, most of Basatin or Hitan Dimashq, the farms of Dimashq at this time, Damascus, they were awqaf. They were endowments. Imagine the power of awqaf and endowments for Muslim organizations. We're talking some 800 years ago plus, because most of it were awqaf, and they were mostly mahjura, hijra ala the owners are like minors, so he was distancing himself from that. No, I'm not going to even eat from that.
SubhanAllah. Naam. And even one of the madaris, that like one of the schools that they put him as the principal over the head, was called Darul Hadith al-Ashrafiyya. Darul Hadith al-Ashrafiyya. And until now, it's a ma'had in Damascus. You can go and study there. And alhamdulillah, last time we went to Damascus, I had the honor of visiting. It's next to the Umayyad Mosque, like walking distance, 5 minutes from the Umayyad Mosque, along with many schools that are there, but it's called Darul Hadith al-Ashrafiyya. And Imam Subki, rahimahullah, from Egypt, when he went to Damascus to work there, maybe 100 years after, he went to Dar al-Hadith and he would kiss the ground and put his face on the ground of the school, and he said, I hope that my face touches the piece of the ground that Imam Nawawi's foot stepped on, as a way of tabarrak and seeking the blessings of Imam Nawawi, this great scholar, rahmatullahi alayhi. And
what would you have to add?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Just adding, when Abdullah was mentioning the name of Imam Nawawi, he mentioned Abu Zakaria, and he also mentioned Muhyiddin. So Imam Nawawi, he actually didn't like being called Muhyiddin, because Muhyiddin is like someone who has brought the deen to life, or a revival of the deen in a way, but he said that the deen Allah. So he himself personally did not like to be called Muhyiddin. The name Abu Zakaria, it's interesting because Imam Nawawi, as we know, he didn't get married, he didn't have children, but they called him Abu Zakaria. And they discuss different reasons as to why was he called Abu Zakaria, and one of the reasons they say is because this is the reason. He didn't have children, and Zakaria alayhi salam, he had children very late in life. And obviously it wasn't because, Imam Nawawi didn't have an eagerness to follow the sunnah, or that he didn't want to get married, but actually it's mentioned that when Imam Nawawi, when he was coming close to death, They asked him that, why didn't you get married? And he replied, he said, لو تذكرت لفعلت. That if I had remembered, I would have done it. So subhanAllah, this shows, how much of an eagerness the Imam had he had for the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, for studying the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just picking off from Abdullah left off when he went to Damascus. So he, rahimahullah ta'ala, he studied in Damascus for 18 years. And it's mentioned that in one day he would have 12 different lessons. So he would go in the morning, and then at the end of the day he would have completed 12 lessons from different topics, from learning ahadith to learning fiqh to learning adab and khuluq and so forth.
Think about it like 12 different lectures. And by lectures is like he goes to the sheikh, he reads to the sheikh, or the sheikh reads to him, and then he takes that lesson or lecture, goes home, fixes everything, writes down everything, proofread everything, edit everything. And that's why they said even he was writing everything and studying everything and putting it in writing, and that's why he ended up producing a lot, because he was not waiting until he become like the super. Sometimes we delay. When we delay stuff, we're gonna do it later. The perfectionists, whatever they call them, idealists, whatever. You never do the job. Start. Yeah, planning is good, but go ahead and do it. And subhanallah, Allah put barakah in his umr because of that.
And this is actually another reason when the scholars discuss shuyukh like Imam Nawawy and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah who didn't get married, one of the reasons they mention is if you look at how much they produce in terms of ilm and of knowledge and books, and Imam Nawawi especially, despite only living for 45 years, this is one of the reasons that he produced so much ilm, he produced so much knowledge, and perhaps that if he had other responsibilities, it may not have been so. So maybe it is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that how much he accomplished. It is also mentioned that when he was studying in Dimashq, his studying was so serious that his body didn't touch the ground for 2 years, meaning that he didn't lie down to sleep. He was studying so constantly that he would fall asleep while sitting or while studying and so forth.
And that's from early on, subhanallah. Abdullah mentioned this when he was working with his father in his dukkan, quote unquote, in his little business. The little kids, you're talking about a little boy, the little kids would invite him. كانوا يكرهونه على اللعب معهم. They would push him, come play with us. And he would go for a couple of minutes just because they are pushing him, and then what? Not just leave them, he would cry. He doesn't want to play. He wanted to go and read Quran and study ilm and do stuff. Subhanallah. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put some qualities there. When Sheikh Yasin al-Maghribi or Murakishi from al-Maghrib happened to pass, and he saw this happening in front of his eyes. One of the greatest big scholars. He saw the kids are forcing another child to play with them, and he doesn't want to play, and he wanted to go read Quran. At this time, one riwayah said he told his sheikh who teaches him Quran. The other says he told his father. That scholar told his father, take good care of him. This is going to be something. This is going to be the most knowledgeable person of his time. قال أمنجم أنت? Are you like a horoscopist person, somebody who reads the future? Or he said no. ولكن شيء أنطقنيه الله أو أجره الله على لساني. This is something I don't even know what I said. This is something that Allah made me say it, and I hope he will be likewise. From that moment, his father took good care of him, got him to learn Quran. Actually, in some of the you read, his father took him when he was 10. He started memorizing or learning Quran when he was 10. And how old? How long did he live? How long did he live? Question for you. How old was he when he passed? 45. 40. He passed away when he was 45. Imam Nawawy probably throughout the age of da'wah, the age of Islam, you will probably not find anybody even closer to him in terms of mu'allafat, in terms of production, producing and authoring. And he passed away when he was 45. Rahmatullah alayh. Even though he started at 10. Subhanallah. So they started early on.
Yeah, and subhanallah, about Imam Nawawi rahimahullah starting ilm at an early age. I want to mention 2 funny stories if that's possible. He would go before he was even an adult, when he was a kid, to the durus and the majalis with the shuyukh. And so it would be Ramadan sometimes, and he would go and he would be eating. He would eat and drink. And they would say, Astaghfirullah, it's Ramadan, what are you doing? You're not allowed to eat and drink. He said, Lastu mukallafan. He said, I'm not mukallaf. I'm not responsible. Like, it's okay. If I eat during Ramadan, I won't have sins, or anything. So he would just tell him straight out, that's how little he was when he would go to the durus, that he would even, subhanallah. And then there's another story they mention that when he was, reading the books when he was little and stuff, and he still wasn't aware of, everything about the adult life, he read that from the mujibat of ghusl is al-jima', that, intimate relations are something that necessitate ghusl. He didn't know what al-jima' was, what these relations were. He thought they were qarqaratul batn, that when your stomach makes noises when you're hungry, that makes ghusl wajib upon you. So every time he would hear his stomach make noises because of his hunger, he would go and make ghusl, and he would go make ghusl. And of course, someone like him that's so pious, he'd probably eat very little. So that would happen a lot of times. And they said even his skin was, like, it would fall off because of how many times he would make ghusl. And then later he learned, what that was. But subhanallah, rahimahullah. And he wrote many books and many accomplishments during his life. And maybe if you'd like, we can read the works that he wrote.
Before we get to the works, what are the branch? What do you think? Usually, when we say Imam, it's not to put any Imam down. But when we say Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, what are you thinking? Which branch of knowledge? Fiqh. Purely fiqh, even though he had some mu'allafat and some stuff elsewhere. When you say, for example, Imam Ahmad, what are you thinking of? Number one, hadith. Hadith and fiqh, but number one for Imam Ahmad is hadith. When you mention somebody like Imam Nawawy, Imam Nawawy is intaha ilayhi al-madhhab al-shafi'i. He is the hujjah after hundreds of years that the khulasa, al-ifta' fil madhhab, madhhab, by the way, as we discussed before, is not the opinion of 1 or 2 or 10. This is a school of thought that developed over hundreds of years until it got to the level of maturity. Each school of thought, you have al-kutub al-mu'tamada, the approved books in each madhab. Madhab kept evolving and developing until finally we have Hashiyat ibn Abidin for al-madhab al-Hanafi. That's it. And then for al-Shafi'i, it got all the way to Imam Nawawi, whatever he said. Imam Nawawi, Imam al-Ramli, but when they disagree, Imam Nawawi. This is the top when it comes to fiqh, in fiqh al-Imam al-Shafi'i, and he was also a well-versed scholar in other branches of fiqh. That's fiqh. What else? What are the famous books that you know? Riyadh al-Salihin, this is hadith for the most part. So he was Sharh al-Imam Muslim, right?
No, Sharh
We
Sahih
can
Muslim.
mix the arad to the books first, and then we get to the branches.
Okay, inshallah. Like all, just list them. He has, rahimahullah, al-adhkar. That's his, and they say, bi'ad dar washtari al-adhkar. Sell your house and buy al-adhkar. Even if you don't have a house, his book al-adhkar is more important. Like, that's how much, subhanallah, how alim it was. It's about like all the hadith that have to do with dhikr, the different, adhkar that are sunnahs at different time before going to sleep and waking up and everything. He has al-arba'in fi mabani al-islam wa qawa'id al-ahkam. Or al-arba'in nawiyya, the 40 Nawawi hadiths, which are really famous, which, they teach at the Islamic school. And he has إرشاد طلاب الحقائق إلى معرفة سنن خير الخلائق صلى الله عليه وسلم. It's an اختصار of Ibn Salah في معرفة علوم الحديث. And he has الأصول والضوابط. He has الإيجاز. He has الإيضاح في المناسك. He has بستان العارفين, a book in تزكية. He has التبيان في آداب حملة القرآن, which is this book that we're reading on the آداب of Quran. He has التحرير في ألفاظ التنبيه, which is in fiqh. And he has التحقيق in fiqh. He has التقريب والتيسير في معرفة سنن البشير النذير صلى الله عليه وسلم. He has تهذيب الأسماء واللغات, another branch, language. He was an imam in language, Arabic language. He has a whole book on Arabic words and the dialects. He has خلاصة الأحكام في مهمات السنن وقواعد الإسلام.
If we go over the books that he compiled, mashallah, we're not going to finish. But if I may interject here, when we talk fiqh, his books, منهاج الطالبين, روضة الطالبين, المجموع, this is المجموع شرح المهذب for Imam Nawawi. This is, for many scholars said, this is the most encyclopedic book of Islam, in such a way that he passed away before he got, this is fiqh, the masterpiece in fiqh al-Shafi'i. He got to bab al-riba and he passed away, rahimahullah. And one of the beautiful things of ilm of this ummah is that it was completed not by a Shafi'i. It was completed by Taqi al-Din Subki. And then he passed away before he finishes. Sheikh al-Muti'i had to finish at the end. So even ulama from different schools of thought, they had to continue what alim on the other aisle did. But when you compare, there's very, very big gap between what he produces, rahimahullah, and other scholars.
I just want to comment on one thing. It's mentioned that when Imam Malik, rahimahullah, decided to write al-Muwatta, which in the Arabic language can be translated to something that is made easy, something that is simplified. One of his contemporaries, one of the people that was there at the time, the scholars, he asked Imam Malik, why are you writing a Muwatta when the people that came before you, they wrote many Muwatta'at, that they've written many, many books of hadith. And he said a statement which I'm not sure if it can be accurately transmitted back to Imam Malik, but either he said it or it's along the lines of what he said, which was مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ بَقِي, that what is done for sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it remains. And Imam Malik's book Al-Muwatta, it didn't really become famous until after him anyways. So subhanAllah, the reason I mention this right now is Riyadus Salihin, Imam Nawawy rahimahullah, he passed away in 576 when he was 45. He wrote Riyadus Salihin in 570. So he wrote it 6 years before his death. 676. Yeah, 676, and he wrote it in 670. At that time, he's close to the end of his life, and he wrote that book 6 years before he passes away, and that's the book that is probably the most well-known along with Arba'un an-Nawawiyya. I mention this because if you read the biography of Imam Nawawy and you look at his works, one thing that you will find is this principle, that whatever is done for Allah's sake, it will remain. And if you read the introduction to this book, and as well as I'll recommend you to read the introduction to Riyadus Salihin, he mentions this, that I have done this so that I can benefit the students, so that's a mean of sadaqah jariyah for me. And so before we move on, I just want to say that we should keep this in mind. And as we go through the book, we also make dua for Imam Nawawy because of all the benefit that we're receiving from reading his books.
One final point before we depart from here, talking about Imam Nawawy. Scholars mentioned there is not a single scholar or a student of knowledge, or actually any Muslim who is trying to learn Islam after Imam Nawawy, except that Imam Nawawy has fadl over him. He is either directly a student of Imam Nawawy through his books directly, or he learned from somebody who learned from a sheikh who learned from a Nawawi. Riyadus Salihin is in every masjid. Sharh Sahih Muslim is everywhere. Al-Adhkar, Amal al-Yawm wal-Layla, everywhere. The books of fiqh, subhanallah. So that is somebody that we got to be so proud of, Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah tabarak wa ta'ala. Before I go from here also, you would imagine this is somebody who dedicated his life for knowledge in the masjid, studying, sleeping, zuhd, wara', ibadah, what have you, and he is disconnected from people, and he is probably, you might have a certain stereotypical thing in your mind. Listen to this, and we will probably conclude unless Abdullah has to say something. He was in Dimashq, in Al-Madrasa Al-Rawahiyya, Al-Madrasa Al-Hadith, right next to Al-Masjid Al-Umawi. Right? And then Al-Zahir Babers at this time, the ruler over Egypt, he seized Syria. He got Syria somehow, right? And he thought there's a lot of people who own land. They don't have paperwork for it. They have been there generations after generations. And once he made it there, he said, all of these are confiscated. He was told by the locals that these people, when somebody just sees a land, taking over the land. They said all of these people, they don't really own it. They take over all of these orchards. You need to confiscate it. He issued a resolution that this should go back to the state. All of these lands should go back to the state. You can imagine thousands of farmers and people who have been owning and this is their living. Who do they go to? This is a sultan. This is like right? They went to Imam Nawawy. Said, Imam Nawawy, we need somebody to talk to him. He went all the way to him, or he sent him a letter and he explained. He said, give it back to them. And you probably read his letter. His letter is very polite, but very strong. لَيْسَ لَكَ ذَلِكَ. they are not required to prove it. You are required to prove that they don't own it. If they are there, if they are, it's under their position, it's theirs. And then the sultan got very mad and he said, take him off. Who is that? Take him off of any position and stop his salary, like fire him. They told him what? He does not have a position and he does not have a salary. So even students, they used to give them jiraya. They used to give them scholarship or money that, for them to eat and drink. And he would not even take from that. He will take it. He will not take it. He will keep it with the nadhir or the endowment, the person who is responsible for the endowment, whatever you call that, supervisor. He would keep it, and then after a year, he will take it and put it back in the waqf itself, or buy books and put it. He never eats from that. That's why he was so free. He has a free voice. Amr ma'ruf, nahi anil munkar. And even if it comes to a sultan, which was not. So at the end, the sultan didn't have any power or authority, nothing to do with him. He ended up ignoring all of that and giving people their dues anyway. So he had a lot of teachers and a lot of students. We don't want to keep going on and on with Imam Nawawy. Does anybody have anything with Imam Nawawy?
Just a small comment on what you said. One of the rulers, I don't know if it's the same one, when Imam Nawawy is mentioned, he said, "La akhafu illa Nawawi." I don't fear anybody except Imam Nawawi, because he wasn't afraid in admonishing them or guiding them to where they needed to be. And the last thing I'll mention is when he was in Dar al-Hadith al-Ashrafiyya, when he was appointed, they mentioned that he didn't, as the Sheikh mentioned, he didn't take any salary. So it's mentioned that he used to eat from the cake and the fig that his father had at the store. So this is just another example of his simplicity, his zuhud, and his wara that he had, rahimahullah ta'ala.
No, not as far as I know, but I don't think so, because his father took him there to this school. It was already running. His father took him to Dimashq, and he stayed there 28 years studying. And towards the end of his life, we did not mention that, he, subhanAllah, as if he knew, he was very dramatically giving a final farewell to all of his teachers and all of his students and all of his friends, as if he is leaving. He's leaving back to Nawa, to his town. And he made Hajj with his father several years before. He went to Bayt al-Maqdis, because it's not far from Huran anyway. He made a trip to Bayt al-Maqdis, and he came back and he passed away in his hometown very soon after that. When his teachers, students, followers, and everybody in Dimashq came to know about that, they had to come all the way to pray janazah for him, even though it was after a long time or sometime after he passed, and everybody started giving long lines of verse in aza or in condolences, in remembering him and commemorating Imam Nawawi. Rahmatullah ala al-Imam Nawawi wa ala jami' ulama al-Muslimin. Now, Sheikh Abdullah will go over the outline of the book, what is going to be discussed, giving you ideas of what is going to be discussed in this book, and we will conclude there. And tomorrow, inshallah, we'll start with the first couple of chapters and move on in the next few days, inshallah.
تبيان في آداب حملة القرآن, inshallah, the book that we're going to read, it's divided into about 10 abwab, right? So inshallah, we're going to try to finish as much as we can from them. And it's a mixture of fiqh. It goes like into مثلا sujood al-tilawa, touching the mushaf, reading the Quran, what are the fiqhi ahkam, the halal and the haram associated with it. And then he goes into adab. And so the first few chapters are more like the adab. The first chapter is الباب الأول في أطراف من فضيلة تلاوة القرآن وحملته. A chapter in some of the things related to the fadila, the greatness and the virtue of reading the Quran and holding the Quran, physically holding the Quran. And he mentioned some of the ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding to the virtue of the reading of the Quran. And then الباب الثاني في ترجيح القراءة والقارئ على غيرهما. The virtue of reading and the qari', and the favor that they have over others. How قراءة القرآن is greater than a lot of other ibadat, and the qari', all the blessings he has. الباب الثالث, the third chapter, في إكرام أهل القرآن والنهي عن إيذائهم, and giving honor to the people of the Quran people who read it, who are associated with it, who teach it, and the prohibition of hurting the people of the Quran. Those are the first three abwab of the book, inshallah.
Okay, so this is more like an introduction, general adab and ahkam, and then he will move on to آداب معلم القرآن ومتعلمه. What are the etiquettes? What are the adab for learning and teaching Quran? Some of these books shaitan might divert our attention when it comes to any maw'idha, whatever it is. Oh, this is not for me. He's talking about Usayram, Amr, Abdullah. No. One ayah. You know one ayah? You are a carrier of Quran. أنت حامل للقرآن. You teach one ayah, and you should, because if you have a child, son or daughter or somebody, teach. بلغ عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ولو آية. Convey on behalf of the Prophet even one ayah. So every Muslim by default is a carrier, is a bearer of the Quran, حامل للقرآن. Every Muslim is a teacher and should be a teacher. It's not only if you have to know the whole Quran and you have to teach the whole Quran, not necessarily. That would be the best if you can, but every Muslim by detail is معلم and متعلم. Actually, I remember the hadith كن عالما أو متعلما ولا تكن الثالثة فتهلك. This is not a hadith. It's a qawl. Be a teacher or a student, and do not be the third person, or else you will be gone. So you either somebody who knows or somebody who is in the process of knowing. So the etiquettes of that. في آداب حامله. What are the etiquettes of the carrier of the Quran? You carry Quran in your heart. How should you respect it? What are the different etiquettes? Chapter 6 في آداب القراءة وهو معظم الكتاب ومقصوده. Chapter 6 is the main chapter of this book. The etiquettes of qira'ah. How do we approach, deal with the Quran, recite Quran? How do we immerse ourselves into Quran? That's what the Imam will discuss, inshallah, in this chapter number 6. Chapter number 7 في آداب جميع الناس مع القرآن. Both of these are the main chapters of the book. The etiquettes related to everybody with the Quran. Actually, I got a couple of questions. From this Fajr today. One of the Huffaz is asking me, can I listen to Quran while I'm going to bed? There's a lot to do when it comes to Quran. Listening, reading, dealing with it, and so on. And I will leave the last 2 or 3 for Brother Usayrim to introduce. Do you have them? Okay. Number 8.
الباب الثامن في الآيات والسور المستحبة في أوقات مخصوصة. So the eighth chapter is talking about the ayat of the Quran and the different surahs in the Quran that it's recommended that you recite them, and the specific timings that have been mentioned in the book and in the Sunnah. الباب التاسع في كتابة القرآن وإكرام المصحف. It's talking about the writing of the Quran and as well as dealing with the Mus'haf and the status of the Mus'haf. And
that's pretty much everything that he will discuss here. These are the very headlines, inshallah. Under that is pretty much everything that has to do with Quran, how to approach it, how to deal with it, how to recite it, what are the etiquettes, what are the ahkam of the Quran, different ahkam of the Quran, and all of that will be necessary for every Muslim to know at all times, and especially when Ramadan is coming. And Allah called Ramadan, He did not call it Shahru Siyam, even though it's the month of Siyam. He said Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. The month of Ramadan is the month when Quran was revealed. So it's Shahru Siyam for sure, yes, but it's Shahru al-Quran. Let's inshallah in this short time, those beautiful scholars here, beautiful brothers, mashallah, are taking from their time to be with us inshallah in the next few nights, bidnillah. Every night, maybe half an hour like that. And we take it from there, bidnillah, tabarak wa ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Do we have any correction, comment, or anything that anybody wants to make? جزاكم وجزاكم الله خير وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah bless you all.